Hello AP Econ students, I'm here to explain worksheet number 22, covering a little bit of comparative and absolute advantage and then some international exchange things, especially with our exchange accounts. This worksheet is review. We've already covered these materials, so hopefully it makes sense to you, but if not, that's what I'm here for, to explain how this works. So the last time we met, I believe we did a little comparative and absolute advantage review, and that's really what this is dealing with. Now, I gave you a chart. Here they're giving you a production possibilities curve showing how much shoes or cloth China and India can both produce. Now, for my money, I think it's helpful to make the chart. I think it's just a little bit easier to read, so I'm going to go ahead and do that out to the side, and then we can look at the numbers a little bit more clearly. So, first you've got China. Again, we got the two countries, China and India, and they can make shoes or cloth. Okay, so according to our chart here, China, which is this line right here, can either make 3 pairs of shoes or 12 meters of cloth, so 3 and 12. And it says that India, according to our line here, can either make 2 pairs of shoes or 5 cloths, so 2 and 5. Okay, now, absolute advantage, remember, really easy. Whoever does it better. In this case, whoever makes more shoes or more cloth. And as far as making shoes are concerned, you can see China has the absolute advantage. They can make 3 shoes compared to India's 2, so they have the absolute advantage. China does. Okay, and then in cloth, same thing. China can make 12 cloth versus India's 5, so China is also better at making cloth. Now remember, that's different though than comparative advantage. What is comparative advantage? Well, first you got to figure out the opportunity cost. So here's where we're going to use our formula, other goes over. So we're asking the question for China to make 1 shoe, 1 pair of shoes. Okay, how much cloth do they give up? And for India to make 1 shoe, we're going to ask the same thing. Again, by getting it down to 1, we can make a comparison between the two nations. So we're going to do other goes over. So we're talking about shoes. The other one, cloth, goes over. So we have 12 over 3, okay, which of course becomes 4. So for every 1 pair of shoes that China makes, they give up 4 cloth. Okay, India, on the other hand, for them to make 1 shoe, okay, other goes over, 5 divided by 2. Okay, 5 divided by 2 is 2.5. Okay, that's how much cloth they give up. Now remember, comparative advantage is whoever has the lower opportunity cost. Well, in this case, India has the lower opportunity cost. They give up less cloth compared to China. Now remember our rule, if we did that well, we can be very certain that China has to have the absolute advantage in cloth. Again, run the numbers and it should bear that out. But remember, mathematically, it's impossible for one nation to have a comparative advantage in both products, so it's got to be China. And then, of course, at the end of the day, you always want to make your comparative advantage. So who would make what? India would make the shoes, because they have the comparative in shoes, and China makes the cloth. Okay. So again, just another quick refresher on comparative and absolute advantage. Hopefully that makes sense. All right, now, here's where we're talking about our current and capital accounts. So remember our little rule. I'm going to summarize it down here real quick. I'll extend my page, give me some more room. So our rule, current account, okay, measures the exchange of goods and services. Okay, so current account, goods and services, things made in one country and then bought by another country. Capital account, sometimes called the financial account, measures the exchange of investments, usually stocks and bonds, but it could be any kind of investments. Again, one country going into another country and building a factory or buying real estate or things like that. Remember our rule, if money comes into the country, it gets credited as a positive, and if money goes out, it gets credited as a negative, okay? And then lastly, the two accounts always balance. The current and capital account always balance or equal to 0. All right, so that being said, this is a nice summary of everything you need to know about current and capital account. Now, if you're in my classroom right now, I know some of you right now would be taking out your phones and getting a picture of my board, saying, all right, I need to know those things. I don't know if you screenshot this. I don't know how this works in this day and age with what we're doing, but whatever you need to do, that's the important stuff. So let's apply this to all these scenarios, and it should make sense. So, number 6, Japan invests in America by building a Toyota factory in Georgetown. Well, that's an investment, so it has to be the capital account. Okay? And remember, when Japan invests in us, they bring the money in. Money comes in, got to be a positive. Okay, so that's the capital account positive. I don't know why I wrote positive, because I've got issues perhaps. There we go, combining the two. Number 7, Americans buy farm equipment from Mexico. Okay, so Mexico's making the farm equipment, sending it to America. Okay, that's got to be the current account, because that's a good or a service, in this case a good. Okay, and we get the farm equipment, the money goes to Mexico, so that goes as a negative in our current account. All right, coming on the back, the French purchased computer software developed by an American company. Again, that's a product, okay, made in America, sent to France, and so that's going to be current account. Okay, because it was something made here, sent there, and that's going to make it positive because we get the money from France. All right, America, this happens all the time. We invest in Ugandan stocks. It's a common thing that you probably hear about. We invest in Ugandan stocks. Obviously, we're talking about the capital account because we're talking about investments. And if we get the stocks and Uganda gets the money, that puts our capital account in the negative. All right, the Irish export potatoes to America. Okay, again, current account because that's a good. And we're getting the potatoes, Ireland gets the money, so that makes our current account negative. All right, the Chinese buy American bonds. That's going to be capital account, obviously, because it's an investment, and it's going to make it positive because the money comes in. Okay, so just a real quick refresher on all those things. Hopefully that makes sense. Now, real quick, let's end this worksheet with a little discussion of how trade affects both aggregate supply, aggregate demand, as well as currency exchange, which tomorrow's worksheet is going to be a little bit more detailed than the next worksheet. It's going to be a little bit more detailed with currency exchange, but you get a refresher right here. So, aggregate supply, aggregate demand, remember our labels, okay, price level on this axis, okay, GDP down here, our real GDP, sometimes more officially. You've got your short run aggregate supply, aggregate demand, and I asked you to draw us in long run equilibrium at full employment, so that would be LRAS, and of course we're producing, we'll call it PL1 and Y1, okay, if you want to call it that. All right, now, China begins buying more American goods. Well, if China's buying more of our goods, that increases the aggregate demand for American goods. Okay, new aggregate demand curve, new price level, and new equilibrium output. Okay, they're buying our goods. That's going to make our current account positive. Okay, so the current account is positive. Of course, if our current account is positive, this is asking about the capital account, that's going to make the capital account negative because the two accounts always have to balance. All right. Now, lastly, it says draw a currency exchange graph for the dollar and show the impact of the increased exports to China. And just as a reminder, the unit of currency in China is the yuan. Okay. Fun fact, a couple years ago, you might remember Kevin Lee, that was over here. His name was yuan, but a little bit different than the dollar. It'd be kind of like naming somebody dollar here. No, it wasn't quite the same. Anyway, so this is the dollar market. Okay, so again, we have to be very specific how we label things to make sure we're labeling correctly. Okay, so you got the dollar market. Here you have the supply of dollars. Okay, that's the correct label. Demand for dollars. Quantity of dollars. All right, now here's the important one. Did you label it correctly? All right, so remember it's the dollar market. So I always like to give the hint, whatever market it is, that's what goes second. In other words, you're talking about how many yuan does it take to get $1. Okay, so how many yuan per $1? And this is currently our equilibrium price and quantity of dollars. Okay? Now, what happened up here? China starts buying our goods. Okay, remember, if China's buying our goods, What do they need in order to get our goods? They need dollars. So to buy our goods, they need dollars. That's going to increase the demand for dollars in our market, okay? And that's going to cause the dollar to appreciate. Now, how do we know the dollar appreciated? Because it takes more yuan to get $1. Remember, if it was a baseball card and it took more yuan to get a baseball card, you'd say, my baseball card's gone up in value. Well, now it takes more yuan to get $1, so the dollar has gone up in value. Okay, so it has appreciated. Now remember, unless they specify, you also could have justified decreasing the supply of dollars in the international exchange market. And the reason is, comparatively, China is buying more goods from us than we are from them. If we're not buying their goods or not buying as much, the supply of the dollar decreases because we don't need to send them dollars to buy their things. So you could have also justified it. If you did it that way, it would have been completely acceptable on your worksheet. Okay, but either way, you're going to see that increase. So again, that's just kind of a refresher of how one affects the other, because you know how they like to ask questions. It's this, and then how does that affect this, and how does that affect this, and so forth. And so there you go. As always, if you have questions that I did not cover, feel free to shoot me an email or a text message or whatever the case may be, and I'd be happy to get to you. But otherwise, hopefully that makes sense. And we'll see you back here when we cover worksheet number 23. Enjoy.